All sports, all plays. Yeah. All sports, all plays. All sports, all plays. 365, we making a plays. We talking the game, get you through the days. We're high in the court, the dime in the lane. Variety topics, living the same. All presentation, sports information. In the airways, taking the nation. All sport, all plays, they work in your faces. Grace at the field, so tie the laces. All sports, all plays.
What is going on, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another episode of ASAP Recap. We missed y'all here. Dustin and myself, Dustin, the stat guy, he's with us as always. Dustin, how you doing today?
Not too bad, Aaman. How are you now that you are done with school for 3+ months?
Oh, it should be good. Well, I got summer classes starting on Monday, so that should be fun. But, yeah, it's good to be out. Finals were great. Got those over with. So now I just got to kick back, relax, and enjoy all the wonderful sports that are going on right in front of us, including the NBA playoffs, with which we saw another 2 games take place yesterday. We're going to start out west with the Suns taking on the Dallas Mavericks. That series was 3-2 in favor of the Suns before last night. They go back to Dallas, and apparently in Dallas, the Phoenix Suns just don't know how to play basketball because the Dallas Mavericks come away with a 113, 86-point win. They control home court whenever they're back there. Luka Doncic has 33 points, 11 rebounds. Jalen Brunson with 18 points, 19 for Bullock as well. The Phoenix Suns, just had 21 from Ayton, 13 from Chris Paul, 19 from Devin Booker, but not much production elsewhere outside of their big three. Dustin, what did last night tell you about these two teams?
Well, last night basically showed that Phoenix is not the same Phoenix Suns team that they were last year. They are showing that they peaked too early, in my opinion, which I've kind of said the last couple weeks, just because you look at that final month of the regular season, Phoenix had everything wrapped up. They had the division wrapped up. They basically had the Western Conference clinched with 3 weeks left in the regular season. So at that point, I think they were kind of coasting, just trying to prevent injuries and get into the playoffs, as opposed to the Eastern Conference where everybody had to give everybody their best shot all the way through because everybody was separated by like 3 games at the top.
Yeah.
And now you have a team like Dallas where if the MVP was a postseason award and not a regular season award, Luka Doncic would be putting his name dead smack in the center of it right now.
Absolutely.
And Doncic is showing that he is going to be an MVP at some point in this league. It's not a matter of if, but it's a matter of when he gets it. Mm-hmm. And I think he puts Dallas in the Western Conference Finals. I think they can go into Phoenix and figure out a way how to beat Phoenix in Phoenix, because a couple of those games in Phoenix have been very close games outside of Game 5. Mm-hmm. Right now, I just like Dallas. I just don't think Phoenix has played well since the start. Even if Phoenix advances, I don't see them coming out of the West because they have not played well since this playoff started.
Yeah, and that's always a worry, right? When you a team that has such a lead, it's like, okay, do we rest players? How long do we rest players? Because they just seem out of sorts. It feels like when everything's going good, it's fine. But you have a lot of stints where they're just not able to get a bucket. They're just cold. They don't know what they're doing. It feels like they haven't played all year. They kind of feel like the Nets at times where they don't know who they're looking to in certain situations. And that's very, unlike the Phoenix Suns that we grew accustomed to in last year's playoff run and in the regular season this year. For Dallas's point, Luka, he is one of the best, NBA playoff performers of all time. Just statistically, I know, that those can always change. But he's just come into it in every single series he's been in. He's carried the Mavericks farther than we thought they should have been. I don't think many people gave Dallas really a shot coming before this series that they were going to beat Phoenix. Now they're here, Game 7. If they could go to Phoenix and find a way to get a win, you're talking about one of the biggest upsets of the postseason, and for Luka Doncic to get a big-time playoff series under his belt. I still believe in Phoenix's ability to go win at home. I think they'll figure it out with Monty Williams and company. But this Dallas team is showing all the flaws that Phoenix has basically accumulated over the last part of this year.
And the sad part is, if Chris Paul doesn't win a ring with Phoenix this year, you have to wonder if he's ever going to get one.
Yeah.
Because I said this on, I forgot what show it was on. It might have been ASAP in the Morning earlier this week, where I think the window for Phoenix is closing. Mm-hmm. And if they do not win it this year, I think their window is completely closed shut, because I do not see DeAndre Ayton back next year.
Really?
And a lot of that goes back to DeAndre Ayton told Phoenix he would give them a hometown discount if they gave him a contract extension. Mm-hmm. Phoenix did not give him that contract extension, so he is no longer going to give Phoenix that hometown discount that he said he was going to give them before, which
Wow.
means I do not see Phoenix being able to afford DeAndre Ayton. I see a team like Chicago or some other team in the Eastern Conference making a run for DeAndre Ayton to try to get him out of the West, and if that happens, Phoenix's window is now shut because they're not going to have that big man.
Yeah. DeAndre Ayton, I think, is so important to this team. And, you look at it more often than not, I would like to see him get the ball more down low in the paint, especially in this series. Who is Dallas really going to use that's going to go up there with DeAndre Ayton on a consistent basis? I don't see that happening a lot. So you go back to Phoenix, I would like to see DeAndre Ayton kind of get in those situations where they just give him the ball, pound him inside and say, all right, go at it. Because now you can tire down them defensively and just make it a Luka Doncic show. And if Luka Doncic puts up 40 and they win, you know what? You got to live with that at some point. But you work out everybody else and you take the most high percentage shots, and that's what DeAndre Ayton inside. So we'll move over to the Eastern Conference because that's where all the juice is, right? Because the series just finished. The Miami Heat send home the Philadelphia 76ers on their home floor. The Miami Heat win 99-90, and what was really a lackluster series after Joel Embiid came back. You saw them, tie it up 2-2, and you thought, okay, maybe this is going to go the distance to 7. Does it go to 6 with Philly winning the next 2 games? But Miami absolutely took it to them. And, we talk about Jimmy Butler, 32, PJ Tucker, 12. You had Adebayo with 10 points as well. Struss also had 20s. Come on, really well for that team. But I think the story of the day is going to be, if right or wrong, it's going to be on the 76ers. And it's going to be on James Harden, who attempted just 2 shots in the second half. Only had 11 points. Joel Embiid had 20 points and 12 rebounds. You had Maxey with 20 points. You had Tobias Harris with 14. But James Harden consistently and yet again not able to put up anything in the playoffs. Does Philly regret this trade, trading away Ben Simmons and Seth Curry to go get James Harden now, Dustin?
Of all the teams that are entering this offseason, I think Philadelphia is going to be the one to watch the most just for a couple of reasons. One, you have to look at Doc Rivers. And we already said that Doc Rivers was on the hot seat, where I think a lot of people felt where if Philadelphia didn't make it to the NBA Finals, let alone the Eastern Conference Finals, would that kind of solidify Doc Rivers' fate in Philadelphia?
Right.
I was one of the few people that kind of gave him a pass just because not having Ben Simmons for that whole year, as much as Ben Simmons and Doc Rivers did bump heads, Ben Simmons made that team better defensively.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I kind of said, I'm giving him a pass this year just because you need to figure out what you were going to do if Ben Simmons wasn't going to be around.
Mm-hmm.
I think Philadelphia is regretting the trade now for James Harden, and a team that once looked like they were going to give James Harden a supermax deal, I don't think he gets it anymore.
Really?
And how this guy is considered a top 75 player of all time, I don't know. And if you look at Joel Embiid's tweets the other day about James Harden, I think he's pretty much done with James Harden. And basically his tweet said James Harden was always a guy that you could count on and you always wanted on your team, but he's not that guy anymore. And this honeymoon phase that we thought we were going to get when we got him is over. So I think even Joel Embiid realized that bringing in a guy like James Harden makes you worse. It doesn't make you better. And I think Philadelphia found out firsthand that James Harden can give you a 30, 40-point night, but they're few and far between. This isn't the Houston James Harden that you're getting anymore.
Yeah, and even in the playoffs, you just don't find it with James Harden. I don't know what it is about the playoffs that scares James Harden away, and maybe it's just his usage rate, the way he plays the game, very physical, tries to draw contact, and he just kind of gets worn down maybe. But you're thinking about a James Harden who kind of made the switch to being more of a playmaker, being more of, trying to at least be more of that Chris Paul type of pass-first guy, and it's just not who he is. With this whole James Harden situation, they have to regret the trade because, yeah, okay, you had to get rid of Ben Simmons. There's no doubt about that. He didn't want to play in Philly. You didn't want him there. But you go get another guy who you're sitting here saying, I don't want him here either. This is a bad look for Philadelphia, and honestly, this might, to me, save Doc Rivers' job. I know that coach is really always the first, the first name that goes in the scapegoat category. But James Harden, rightfully so in my opinion, is getting the blunt of the blame for the 76ers loss in this series. Again, this is a duo that people were saying, oh, this is Kobe and Shaq. This ain't Kobe Shaq. All right. We told you that right here, Dustin. I said that earlier. So when you look at this, James Harden to me is the guy that has to receive the blunt of this. It puts Daryl Morey in an awkward position now. Like you said, the Supermax contract was something we were talking about them giving him. Daryl Morey and James Harden have a great relationship. That's why I always wanted to be in Philadelphia, back and reunited with Daryl Morey from their Houston days. Does Daryl Morey's, where does the allegiance fall? Does he say, look, we'll get rid of doctors, come back, James? Or says, James, you got to take a discount to come back? I don't know. And that's to me what I'm looking for as we move into this offseason.
I think it's going to be a little bit of both, honestly. I think he's going to talk to James Harden first to see if he wants Doc Rivers to stay around. If Harden says yes, then it's going to be more like, okay, well, what do you want our team to look like? And if you want it to look like this, we can't pay you this. I think Morey's going to be basically as blunt and honest with Harden as he can be, while basically saying, we have no problem if you want to remain here with us, but you need to be under this number to remain with us so we can get you other pieces that you might need.
Yeah, for sure. There's got to be some kind of give and take here. But let's talk about Miami for a little bit. With Miami, right, this is a team that finishes the number 1 seed in the East. They quickly finished out in their first series. They go and finish out the 76ers in 6, awaiting the winners of the Celtics and Bucks series that we'll see tonight, or maybe if the Celtics get a win tonight, we'll see on Sunday. In your opinion, do you think this Miami team has the ability to beat a Bucks or Celtics team, the winner of this next series in the East?
I do and I don't.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, you're the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference for a reason.
Right.
Well, you've shown that you can beat Milwaukee. You've shown that you can beat Boston. But can you beat either one of those teams 4 times in 7 games? Mm-hmm. I don't know if they can, because this isn't the regular season where you play them 3 times in 82 games, and you might see them once every 2 months, where you could catch them at a really bad time at the beginning of the year, and you could catch them very injured at another time. This would be 7 times basically in 10 or 11 days, where you'd have to figure out how to beat them 4 times, and I don't know if they can get 4 wins in that amount of time. Mm-hmm. I think they can give each team a battle and pick up 2 wins, but I just don't see Miami. I said whoever came out of the Brooklyn and Boston series is going to make the NBA Finals, and I kind of stand by that now. Whoever comes out of the Bucks and Boston series is going to make it to the NBA Finals. Mm-hmm. This just kind of still shows that Eric Spoelstra is an underrated coach, because he never gets the respect he deserves, just because he had that 5-year run with LeBron, Bosh, and Dwayne Wade, and then had Dwayne Wade another 2 years after LeBron left, so nobody gives him the credit he deserves. Yeah. But Spoelstra's a winner. And 100%. Out of all the teams that are in the playoffs, that are remaining in the playoffs, Miami is the only team that does not have a superstar. Jimmy Butler is an all-star, but he's not a superstar. Yeah. They have a bunch of all-star caliber players and a bunch of role players that know their position and they know their spot on the team. They buy into Spoelstra's system, and they just do extremely well with it, and that's what makes Spoelstra such a great head coach. He might not have a championship since LeBron James left, but he knows how to win without having a superstar on his roster.
Yeah. And think about this. When you think about the teams that are left in the Eastern Conference, right? You talk about Miami, and then you talk about the Bucks, and you talk about Boston. Where is the super team? Everyone was talking about Brooklyn, the super team, or Philly, the super team. And now you look at Boston and Milwaukee and Miami as the teams left. These are teams that the players have bought into the culture. They understand their role, and they play to their role. They play to their strengths, and they don't need 4 or 5. They don't need the 3 superstars. And that's something that, maybe the NBA is taking a step back in that direction. I think we all would enjoy to see, the competitiveness. Maybe this prevents guys from saying, oh, let's go and just form and try to build these gaudy teams, because it's not a guaranteed championship. Look at Philly, look at Brooklyn. There's not a guaranteed championship, and that's something that's really cool that's coming out of the Eastern Conference right now.
And the thing with super teams in the NBA, having a super team is great. Having the best player in the league is great. Having a Chris Bosh, LeBron James, Dwayne Wade combination is great. Having a Kobe Shaq combination is great. Mm-hmm. You can have all the talent in the world, but you still have to be able to play together.
Yep.
And you saw that with Brooklyn this year. Kyrie Irving, James Harden, and Kevin Durant together, probably the most lethal and talented trio in NBA. And
Yeah.
you could argue that would be the most lethal most lethal trio in NBA history, knowing how many points all three of those guys can score on a given night.
Yep.
They just couldn't play together. And it doesn't
No.
matter if you have a super team or not. If you can't play together, your super team is not a super team. It's just a team.
Yep. Yeah, and that's absolutely true. It's just a team. You got to work and play together. And let's talk about some teams that are going to have to play together tonight. A couple of them trying to avoid elimination as we move into today's NBA playoff games. We're going to start in the West once again with the Grizzlies and the Warriors. They play at 10 p.m. today. The Grizzlies on the brink of elimination as they head back to Golden State, down 3-2 in the series. The Grizzlies got a big-time win over the Warriors, blew the Warriors out here. Do you think the Grizzlies are able to get it done here in Game 6 and send it back to Memphis for a Game 7?
I give the Grizzlies a ton of credit because I thought they were done in Game 5.
Me too.
But there's not a way in hell I think it goes to Game 7. Yeah. I think Memphis used so much energy in Game 5 just to get it to a Game 6. I don't think they can play that good again. Going to Golden State, I don't think that Golden State crowd's going to let them settle in. I don't think they're going to let them get on the kind of the groove that they got on to Memphis. And I just see Golden State. It's going to be a closer game than what it was the last time they were in Golden State, that's for sure. Mm-hmm. But I still think Golden State wins by around 8 to 10 points and gets to the Western Conference Finals.
Yeah, I think Memphis fed off the energy of that crowd, how electric they were. And I think when you have that electricity running through the crowd, it just, interjects with the players. You could see it when they play in Memphis. They kind of play with a different energy, diving for the loose balls. The fast breaks are just crazy. I think going to Golden State is kind of the complete foil to that. It's going to be massive energy, but it's going to be energy all the Warriors' way. And the energy that the Warriors team feeds off of is just very similar. It's a very similar fashion. So to me, I do see the Warriors winning in Game 6. I don't see the Game 7 happening. I think Memphis gives them a run here, but I just think in the Chase Center, when you have Steph, when you have Draymond, when you have Clay, you have Jordan Poole, and all these guys, I just think the Warriors are going to get it done over the Grizzlies tonight. So we'll move on to the Eastern Conference, and this is a very interesting game, a conflict of interest for me at least. But we talk about the Bucks taking on the Celtics. They head back to Milwaukee after Milwaukee gets a come-from-behind win against Boston in Game 5 to make it 3-2 as they move to Game 6. Dustin, does the series end tonight, or do you think the Celtics extend it to 7?
Celtics win it in 7. That was my pick since the beginning. This series just confuses me.
Yep.
Because right when it looks like one team gives the other team the final knockout blow, the other team bounces back. Like when Boston came back from 17 down against Milwaukee in Game 4, I kind of thought that was the knockout blow that Boston was going to give Milwaukee because I figured Boston was going to go up 3-2. Milwaukee was going to take Game 6. Boston was going to take Game 7. And then you have Boston kind of return the favor, blow an 8-point lead with under 2 minutes to go in Game 5, let Milwaukee regain control. Now they got to figure out a way to win at Milwaukee just to get the series back to Boston.
Yeah.
I think they can do that just because it seems like whenever Boston loses, they come out with a completely different game plan and they look like a different team. So I do think the series gets back to Boston. Question is, when they get back to Boston, can they pull it off? I'm not going to go back on my pick now just because I said Boston in 7. But they have to be able to shoot better. They have to shoot more consistently. And they just have to generate more offense than what they're generating. They have the defensive game plan now. It's basically you let Giannis be Giannis, you let Giannis do what Giannis does, and you take the other 4 guys away. Because without Chris Middleton in that lineup, you do not have that secondary option that can beat you consistently. Yep. So you need to force the other guys to beat you. Now it's up to Jason Tatum and Marcus Smart and Jaylen Brown to play Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, and Marcus Smart basketball. And if they can do that, the Bucks don't have enough to beat Boston.
Yeah. I think, from the roster perspective, without Chris Middleton, it's hard to see the Bucks coming away with it. But they're here 3-2. I think Boston wins tonight. And what it feels like is if these two are in a boxing fight, Milwaukee's always throwing the first punch, but Boston always comes back with the counter, right? They've always come back with the counter. Lose Game 1, they come back Game 2. Lose Game 3, come back Game 4. Lose Game 5, it looks like they're going to come out Game 6. If they win Game 6, they got to find a way in Game 7 to throw the first punch and hit on the first punch. This series has gone back and forth. It's been really fun to watch. For me, the thing is, I just don't see Boston getting or penetrating inside offensively. I think they've really settled for a lot of tough, long twos, contested threes. I know you can hit it, right? That's fine, but go get your high percentage shots, run some offense inside, and go and attack. I think if you do that, you can get Giannis into some foul trouble. If you can test him down there, sure, he might win a couple of those battles, but he's going to pick up a couple fouls. When he picks up a couple fouls, the way he plays and tries to drive down the floor, you can get him with a couple of charges. We saw that happen in game 4. In game 4, they were able to draw a couple of charges off of Giannis late in the game and basically take that thing away from him. So if they can get inside, penetrate, and get Giannis into some foul trouble early, they can really make him, you're not going to make him a non-factor, but you can cut his production down a little bit. The Celtics' key to me is they just have to get inside. Like I said, the defense is there. They have the personnel to do it. Just get inside and generate some good offense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that'll be an interesting series to also watch if we can get it done. I also do want to ask you about Sunday. The Mavericks take on the Suns. You said you had the Mavericks winning, right? If once they get back, if they get back, if the Mavericks win tonight. Excuse me. I'm all over the place. The Mavericks won last night.
Yeah.
So on Sunday they're scheduled to play Game 7. Do you have them winning Game 7?
Yes.
You do. So would you concur with the statement here from Damian Hernandez? He said Mavs Heat final.
No.
Calling it. Yeah, I think the Eastern Conference is also something, and also the Western Conference. I think we disagree on both ends, huh?
The Eastern Conference has a better shot of happening than the Western Conference because Golden State is coming out of the West. Mm-hmm. There's just, yes, that 38-point loss to Memphis doesn't look good, but you take away that loss, that was really the first bad game that Golden State has played the entire postseason versus everybody else that's been in the postseason, the Bucks, the Celtics, the Heat, the Mavericks, the Suns. They've had at least 3 or 4 bad games where they've looked really bad. When Golden State has struggled against Memphis, but even when they struggled, they didn't look terrible. Their last loss was the first time they've looked terrible the entire postseason, and we've said it, I've said it, I know a lot of people on ASAP in the morning have said it. The way Golden State's playing now is exactly the way they played when they had Kevin Durant. They just don't have Kevin Durant. They have a guy in Jordan Poole basically filling that Kevin Durant spot, and you have a guy in Andrew Wiggins who's kind of your X factor. Right. And there's really not a team that can – if you get 25-30 from Curry, Thompson, and Jordan Poole every night, you know you're going to get 15 to 20 from Wiggins every night. That's already 90 points out of those 4.
Yep.
There's not a team in the NBA that can keep up with that kind of an offensive threat on a given night for a 7-game series.
Yeah, it'd be tough to do that. Damian, the Celtics do not have to worry about Chris Middleton because he is not able to play. Last I have checked, at least, I'm not sure. I haven't seen any updates that he's going to be able to play.
Probably not going to be back for the postseason.
Right. So, luckily for the Boston Celtics, you don't have to worry about Chris Middleton. But Giannis definitely someone that you do have to look for. The NFL schedules, though, will transition. The NFL schedules did get released, and it's really interesting, right? We have a couple of teams that, some games jump out. The Bucks-Packers games, to me, jump out. I think the Bucks have some of the best quarterback battles. Talking about, then they go play Cincy. They have to go play the Chiefs. They play the Packers, of course. There's a lot of teams in there. They throw a lot of quarterbacks at them. I think they have the 4th toughest schedule. Was there a schedule or a couple of games to you, Dustin, that really stood out amongst the rest after they announced it last night?
Well, I'm going to circle right back to Thursday night, the season opener.
Okay.
Buffalo and the Rams. That, to me, is a potential Super Bowl matchup.
Yeah, for sure.
The Rams obviously have all the pieces still in place from last year. They added Allen Robinson to that wide receiver mix, so now you have Robinson, Kupp, and Wood, so that's going to make that that much lethal. Buffalo's still one of the deepest, if not the deepest team in the AFC, so you kind of have to look at that first game of the season right away to kind of set the tone where that really legitimately has a chance to be a Super Bowl preview. Not saying it's going to happen, but there's a shot that it's going to happen.
100%. You talk about the Rams, still a top 3 team in the NFC, and Buffalo, you could argue, is the most well-rounded team out there in the AFC. So there's definitely a high probability that could be a Super Bowl matchup.
Other games I like in week – I'm just going to go right on week 1 here.
Yeah, let's do week 1.
Denver at Seattle.
That was a fun storyline.
Russell Wilson coming right to Seattle on Monday Night Football, week 1. That's kind of a way to be like, hey, guess what, guys? Yeah. Week 2, you have Chargers and Chiefs. We knew what we saw both of those games last year. Is Brandon Staley going to have the balls to kick field goals this year, or is he going to try to just not kick it again and miss out on the playoffs because of it?
Mm-hmm.
Mike McCarthy going back to Green Bay. How is that going to be for a reception for him? Are they going to boo him like a lot of people expect him to be booed? Are they going to give him at least some respect because he does deserve respect for what he did in that organization? And then you look at the Thanksgiving games this year. The Thanksgiving games this year, especially, I think, are going to be great games. For the first time in a long time.
Yeah, they've been some lackluster games in years past.
Obviously, Detroit's going to be Detroit. I mean, It is what it is. Bills are going to curb stomp the crap out of Detroit. But at least you get to see Josh Allen on Thanksgiving.
And you get to see the Detroit Lions bite the kneecaps of the Bills players after they stopped them.
Cowboys and Giants, I mean, say what you will, Dallas is a better team. But the Giants always play the Cowboys tough. Yeah. So that game should have it. And then Vikings and Patriots on the nightcap of that. I think that game is going to be a very good game.
Dustin and I are going to throw hands, right?
Well, I don't throw hands.
Me neither. Don't worry about it. I do want to talk about one Patriots game. The Patriots-Bears game, to me, there's only one particular reason. Me as a Patriots fan in the 2021 NFL Draft wanted Justin Fields. So to see him coming to Foxborough to take on Mac Jones, I think that's a cool second-year quarterback battle. But again, I was looking at the Bucs schedule, and week 1 they take on the Cowboys. Like I said, they take on the Packers. They take on the Chiefs. They take on the Bengals. I think they take on the Chargers as well. They just have some incredible quarterback matchup. I was thinking Russell Wilson, so about the Seahawks, the Broncos. So there's going to be some incredible quarterback matchups. I'm excited for the entirety of the AFC West. All those games should be a lot of fun. I think with all the movement this year, it makes this schedule release act so much more fun because you get to see the storylines. We even highlighted the Denver-Seattle game because of that storyline of, oh, well, there you go. There's your former team. It kind of like last year when you saw the Tom Brady go back to New England. I think that's super, super exciting to see with all the movement happening in the NFL.
Yeah, and the other thing that I'm going to be excited for this year, and it's something that hasn't happened before just because the holiday changes every year, is Christmas Day.
Yeah.
And that's because Christmas falls on a Monday this year. Yes, and yet they're doing a Christmas Day triple header on that Monday just because everyone's off of work. So you have Packers in Miami, which theoretically Miami does have the talent to be a playoff team this year, but are they going to be in the playoffs? You have I think it's the Bucks and Cardinals, I want to say, that play Christmas Day maybe. That's, that has playoff implications, especially when you look at how the Cardinals were last year. And then there's another game on Christmas Day that I forgot what it was already, but it's supposed to be a relatively good game too. So, I mean, everyone has the holiday games you look forward to. You also have, depending on if he can play, we don't know yet, Deshaun Watson and going back to Houston in December. Yeah. That could be intriguing if he can play. You have the Washington Commanders going to Indianapolis. Carson Wentz getting his team.
That's what I'm saying. All this movement is just, I think it's going to be really exciting to see some of these players return back home.
A.J. Brown and going to the Titans. I mean, or Doug Peterson facing the Eagles, his former team. Like, there's so many games that you can look at and be like, well, you literally just Josh McDaniels versus the Patriots.
Yeah,
that game right there is going to be a huge game. Like, every single game on the schedule this week, I think you can pick every single week and look at it and find one game that has a storyline, whether it's a former coach going against his former team, whether it's a former quarterback, a former player. Like, every week this week, whether you're a fan of the team or not, like, let's just use the Patriots, for example. The Patriots could be playing the Lions in week 1. Obviously, you're going to watch the Patriots because you're a Patriot fan.
Right.
Being a fan of football, you're turning into Denver and Seattle later because of the storyline.
And even in that Patriots-Lions storyline, Matt Patricia, right, coached the Lions, came back. They're just small storylines everywhere. Damon Hernandez says something in the chat. I think the Lions might make the wild card this season. Not a bad shout. I mean, like, I think he's basically basing this off of the rookies that they brought in, the Aiden Hutchinson, they didn't bring in Jermaine Johnson, but Aiden Hutchinson. They go and, pick up Jared Goff. They have Jamison Williams. I think the team's still very young. I still think they need a lot of pieces. And when you talk about the NFC North, Green Bay probably wins that division. Minnesota's going to give them – you don't think they do? Well, they might not.
I think Minnesota wins the division for the sole purpose of who is Aaron Rodgers going to throw to?
then that would be the question, right? Is Christian Watkins going to make that leap year one? Who
Do you
knows?
trust Sammy Watkins to give you a 16-game season?
I don't.
He hasn't played 16 games since his rookie year.
All right.
Do you trust Christian Watson to be your number one receiver as a rookie? You've seen it
Devontae
before
Adams
that Aaron Rodgers doesn't trust rookies right away.
Yeah.
So now you're
Devontae Adams, right? Same
yeah.
thing.
Now your number one option is an aging Randall Cobb, who's not a number one,
Right.
or Alan Lazard, who is a good number 3 and a decent number 2 at best, depending on the system you're in.
Right.
So are the Packers gearing more towards these low-scoring 20 to 17 games since they continue to beef up on that defense?
Mm-hmm.
Or are they going to try to run this high-octane offense that Aaron Rodgers has run for the last 15 years? Because if they're going to try to outscore people like they normally do,
not going to work.
They don't have the firepower to do it.
Right.
And that's why I think Green Bay's going to win. I still think 10, 11 games, but they're not going to be a 13-win team this year.
Yeah. And I think it's definitely going to be an adjustment. I think, they have the ability to be a power running team. So does Aaron Rodgers buy into that? Because when you talk about A.J. Dillon, Aaron Jones, the offensive line is still intact. You can go and basically run it and run some play action and make life easier on your receivers. But if they try to do the same thing as they have the past couple of years, it's not going to work. So is Aaron Rodgers going to buy into the power running scheme that you have over there? They do have it set up. Are they going to buy into it running it 60, 70% of the time and throwing it the other 30, 40%? I don't think he will.
Not with him under center, no.
Exactly. So that's really the one thing. But I think the Vikings will be right up there with them because they just have all the pieces in place. Kirk Cousins played really well last year. And again, this team is not winning 13 games. So it's, who's going to get to 10, 11 wins. And if the Packers try to run that power running system and Aaron Rodgers doesn't want to, we're going to see a lot of controversy surrounding a team that already had a lot of controversy. It could fold off the rails here. It could definitely fly off the rails. Damian asked this question: who do y'all think will have a better rating on Christmas, the NBA or the NFL? Dustin, do you want to go first on this one?
See, that's the thing. We're not going to know what the NBA Christmas Day games are,
right?
At least for another 4 months. And I think, I believe LeBron James, Kevin Durant, and Stephen Curry always play on Christmas just because they're going to bring in the biggest ratings. If the NBA was smart, and nobody calls the NBA smart, but if the NBA was smart, they would scrap their Christmas Day games altogether this year and move them to Christmas Eve.
I agree.
It's because the NFL is king when it comes to ratings all the time. Yep. So even if you plan to have 4 Christmas Day games and the NFL has 3, guess what? 3 of your 4 games are going on during all 3 NFL games. The only time that you're going to have a game that's not being in conflict is the one that starts at 5 o'clock, where people are going to tune into that game between the 3 o'clock game and the nightcap where, we got a 2-hour window to watch basketball now. Yeah. Otherwise, the NFL's Christmas Day ratings are going to trump the NBA ratings. So if they want to save things for a rating side of things, they should move those Christmas Day games to Christmas Eve. Granted, yes, you're still competing with the NBA, but more people will watch it on Christmas Eve as opposed to Christmas Day.
I'm in the same boat. I don't care who plays on Christmas Day. You could bring back the 96 Bulls and have them play the 2017 Warriors on Christmas Day. I still don't think you do better ratings than what the games are going on in the NFL. The NFL is king, as you mentioned. The NBA hasn't really competed with them. So, as good as these games can be on Christmas Day, as fun as they may be, even if the NFL games are bad, we know we're going to tune into the NFL. It's just something about the NFL that has this, they just rule the ratings world of the entirety of it. Dustin, are there any more games that really stood out to you, or do you feel like we can move on to the next topic?
I mean, I could go through that whole schedule and look at it, but I think I want to see what that Vikings-Packers game in Week 1 looks like.
Yeah.
I want to see kind of what wrinkle Kevin O'Connell gives this Viking offense that was already a very good offense, and now you're actually bringing in an offensive-minded head coach that basically came from the Super Bowl champions, that basically made Matthew Stafford look the best he's ever been. And now you're coming to a team that has Kirk Cousins that just had the best season of his career statistically wise. 35 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. What is Kevin O'Connell going to do with Kirk Cousins? Is he going to get Kirk Cousins to that next level? Is he going to turn Justin Jefferson into Minnesota's version of Cooper Kupp, which I would be more than happy with that.
I'm sure you would be.
Justin Jefferson is a freak of nature.
Yes.
But it's still going to hinge on that defense, and bringing in the defensive coordinator from the Broncos, that's going to be huge. And with a healthy Danielle Hunter, which we know what Danielle Hunter is when he's healthy, now you add DJ Wanham, who's now in his third year, who's shown plenty of pass rushing potential. And the big offseason move that Minnesota made that nobody's talking about that could prove to be the steal of the free agency is getting Darius Smith.
Yeah.
Darius Smith was cut by the Packers.
Tried him away from the Ravens and the Packers.
He was cut by the Packers, signed with the Ravens, then backed out of that contract. So I think a lot of people thought he was having second thoughts about leaving Green Bay and then going back to Green Bay. And yet Minnesota plucks him before he can even get back to Green Bay, signs him basically for the same amount of money that he was making in Green Bay. So you pair Darius Smith with Danielle Hunter, that's not going to be a fun pass rush to face.
No, it's not.
Then you have DJ Wanham, who had, I think, 7 or 8 sacks last year. You still have Eric Kendricks in the middle on defense. You still have Delvin Tomlinson. You signed Harrison Phillips from Buffalo to be your other nose tackle in the middle. You got a linebacker from Arizona that I can't remember his name that you brought in. Patrick Peterson came back. Yep. You got you got that Asin from Georgia to be safety next to Harrison Smith. And then you got Booth Jr. from Clemson.
Yeah, they picked up Andrew Booth.
Who's a steal in the second round, who's going to be on the other side of Patrick Peterson.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, the Vikings, I like the roster makeup. And they could be very, very good this year. I'm curious for the Patriots. For one thing, it's the offensive coordinator position, and I think we're going to really get to see that unfold against Miami week 1, then Pittsburgh week 2. I think Pittsburgh week 2 to me is really intriguing because, of course, Mitch Trubisky's only going to be under center, or maybe it's Kenny Pickett. Who knows? But defensively, we know what the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to be, and so for a Patriots team that has yet to name an offensive coordinator, and the offensive coordinator position is apparently going to be down to 2 people. It's going to be down to Matt Patricia or Joe Judge. So
give it to Joe Judge.
I would hope it would be Joe Judge, but Matt Patricia seems to be more and more likely than Joe Judge is. So to me, that's what I'm looking for, especially against a high quality defense like Pittsburgh. Just continuing to see Mac Jones's progression, right? You know, you go, they pick up Tyquan Thornton in the draft, which I actually really like. Get a speedster guy, you can get the ball out quick and make plays like that, go down the field. I'm intrigued to see what the Patriots do and how they open it up. Damian brings up the Broncos, Seahawks, and the Browns-Texans games. Like we mentioned earlier, the return games. I think, again, we have a lot of those this year with a lot of the movement going on in the NFL. The only thing that would have made it better if I think the Raiders had played the Packers. Could you imagine that turnout for that game? That would have been absolutely.
That's actually next year.
That's next year, right? So it's just going to be fantastic. I think the movement just makes it all that much better, and the storyline should be absolutely fantastic to watch and to look at.
I guess the other team I'm intrigued about too is Kansas City. Mm-hmm. And the reason why I'm intrigued about this is if Eric Bieniemy wants to be a head coach, this is the year that he can showcase it 100%. Now that you don't have Tyreek Hill. But if you look at that Kansas City wide receiver room right now, it's a better wide receiver room than what they had when Tyreek Hill was there. You have Marquez Valdes-Scantling, who is going to be basically a bigger version of Tyreek Hill. He's not going to be the 5'10", 170-pounder. He's going to be a 6'4", 215-pounder that does exactly what Tyreek Hill did. Yeah. You still have Mecole Hardman, who's going to be your Swiss Army knife. You have Juju Smith-Schuster, who is going to be your number 2 and is a better route runner than anybody on that team. You still have Josh Gordon, who actually had a pretty significant role last year. You drafted Sky Moore. You still have Travis Kelce. And you added Ronald Jones, who you got from Tampa Bay.
That was a big move, yeah.
To help Clyde Edwards-Helaire in that backfield. So if Eric Bieniemy wants a head coaching job, he needs to show that he can run this offense, and I expect him to.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's interesting. Miami, just because you brought up Kansas City, Miami's another thing to look out for, right? Mike McDaniel coming over, and then Tyreek Hill. All right, how does Tua look? Week 1, you're going to get thrown under the fire against New England, so there's your first test right away. I'm curious to see what the new look Miami Dolphins are going to be. Again, I was someone who's been defending Tua. I said, let's actually let him see a year of football before we make any judgments about him. Well, this is your year, right? Just like we said, if Eric Bieniemy wants to be a head coach, this is the year to prove it. If Tua Tagovailoa wants to be a starting quarterback in the NFL, this is the year you're going to prove it. At least for the Miami Dolphins, you have to do it this year. Otherwise, you're going to be, bona fide backup. Does he? All right, go hit me with this.
New head coach, new system.
Okay.
Usually you take more.
2
Usually it
years.
takes you about a year to get used to a new system, especially when you were in the same system for 2 years prior to that, where he did make transitions from his rookie year to year two.
He did.
Granted, those transitions weren't like great transitions, but he still looked better in year two than he did in year one. And that's
Right.
because he had the same offensive coordinator. Not only do you have a new offensive coordinator, but you have a new head coach. So do you give him a free pass this year if he struggles, knowing that it's a new system, a new coach, new weapons outside of Waddle, who he's still going to be the primary. Even with Tyreek Hill there, Jalen Waddle's going to
Oh
be
yeah.
who is
The connection
number
that they
one
have
priority.
is you don't just get overnight.
So I think Tua's job is saved for 2 years. I think
Okay.
regardless of how he does this year, they are going to give him that fourth year just because it's a new system, it's a new coach. You want to see how he does, and it's going to be a learning curve because it's a completely different style.
And so I could see that because he still has 2 more years left on his original
He's
rookie
got 1
deal.
year left on his rookie deal plus the team
The
option if they want to get
first to tenure, right? So the only question for me is how highly do they rank or grade the quarterbacks coming out in this year's draft, right? The CJ Strouds, the Bryce Youngs of the world. Because if you're sitting there and you're sitting at number 3, right? Say you don't have a good year at all, and you're sitting at number 3, and you have Stroud or Young available, how highly do you rank those guys versus Tua Tagovailoa? To me, that's going to be the bigger question. If they are sitting in the teens of the draft, I don't think they'll draft a quarterback. But if they end up being a top 10, top 5 team in the draft, I wouldn't be surprised to see them go quarterback route. And maybe they say, Tua, look, it's still your team. But if you don't, we got the guy waiting in the wings. Or maybe they say, look, Tua, we're done. We're trading you away. I don't know what this thing is going to be. But to me, I think the clock is ticking just because of how much better this quarterback class is than what we saw last year. And now it's like, okay, well, these guys seem to be like they're going to be good NFL players. At the very minimum, they'll be solid.
Yeah.
So if you're bad and we have an opportunity to draft these guys, maybe we have to draft these guys. I think that's the only thing for me that's pushing me towards Tua's got to prove it this year.
I just want to see him make strides.
I agree too. If he's making strides forward, then there's no need to change it.
If
right?
they don't make the playoffs, that's one thing.
Again, I agree with that.
If he's in that 24, 25 touchdown range with around 12, 13 interceptions, I mean, not a great ratio, but that's still strides.
Yes.
And that's what you need to see out of him. And then you can be like, okay, he's going to fit in this system. Now we know that we just need to get better in the running game. We need to improve here. We need to improve there. But he just needs to make – I'm not going to say he needs to take that next step forward because it's going to be hard to do that in a new system in year one.
Yeah,
he's just got to make strides to show that he can lead a team beyond next year.
Damien asked in the chat, who do y'all think has more pressure, Murray or Tua? I don't think it's really close. If you're talking about Kyler Murray, I think Tua has a lot more pressure than Kyler Murray does.
I look at it the other way.
Okay.
Murray wants to be traded.
Right? Or he wants the contract, right?
Wants the contract, okay. And
officially, he said he wants to be a
Cardinal. He basically said he's not going to play if he doesn't get this contract, correct?
Okay. Sure.
Let's just say he doesn't play. Let's just say he decides to go the route and not play.
Right.
What's to stop Arizona from just bringing in Baker Mayfield?
Do you think Baker has as much success as Kyler does?
Oh, heck yeah. Cliff Kingsbury recruited Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, but he didn't end up playing with Baker Mayfield.
He didn't, but Arizona's system is very similar to what Oklahoma ran.
Okay. I can see the point.
And Mayfield came from Oklahoma.
Right.
Murray came from Oklahoma.
Okay.
Mayfield would have a number one receiver like he's never had. I don't care what you want to say about Landry or Beckham. Granted, Hopkins does miss 6 games. Mayfield will still have Hopkins, who is a better receiver than Mayfield has ever had. Sure. You have a young Rondale Moore who you can kind of mold into your version of Jarvis Landry.
Mm-hmm.
You have a red zone threat in A.J. Green, plus you're going to have Zach Ertz as your tight end.
Okay.
Yes, he won't have the running game he had in Cleveland, so more pressure is going to be on him that way. But that's why I think Murray has more pressure on him, because if he doesn't play, yes, it's going to hurt Arizona, but what's to stop Arizona from bringing in Mayfield, a guy who is under contract, a guy who actually wants to play, a guy who wants to get out of Cleveland because of the Deshaun Watson situation, where If he goes to Arizona and puts up numbers close to what he put up in Cleveland, he's going to get an extension with Arizona because it'll be cheaper than a Kyler Murray extension.
And I can see the point of having him as a filler, but I still don't think Baker Mayfield makes that team nearly as good as Kyler Murray does. I think he might put up numbers, but the offensive line is going to be significantly worse in Arizona than it was in Cleveland. And here's a guy who is coming off a bunch of injuries, couldn't stay healthy last year, never really had an injury history, but now you're talking about a body that was really battered up last year. Now you get behind an offensive line that's not as prolific as he had. The running game isn't as prolific. They're going to, I don't know. Again, I understand the point that, yeah, he'd be a good filler to have in there, and sure, they could extend him for a cheaper rate. But to me, you're back to being the third team in that division. Maybe the fourth, because Seattle is now out of it, to me, you'd still be the third team in that division with Baker. I think I'd put you under San Francisco, no matter who their quarterback is. Like, I don't know about what Baker Mayfield can bring to Arizona. Maybe he does have a lot of success, but I don't know. The reason I said Tua has more pressure is because I think we all know Kyler Murray's a bona fide star. We know what he can be when he's on the field. Injury-wise, that's something else. But when he's on the field, we know what he is, who he is, and we see him as, arguably a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. While Tua, we're saying, well, this is the chopping block year for him. So that's why I thought Tua had more pressure. But bringing Baker Mayfield in is an interesting option. Again, I think you do everything you can to bring Kyler Murray back, because you don't get those kinds of guys very often. I don't know. I don't know about the Baker Mayfield thing. You're muted, Dustin, by the way.
If you look at Pro Football Focus and you look at the end of the year offensive line rankings after Week 18, Cleveland's offensive line ranked 8th in the NFL.
Okay.
Arizona's ranked 9th.
Okay.
So the offensive line isn't much difference. The biggest difference was Cleveland's offensive line ranked number 2 in run blocking and number 19 in pass blocking. Arizona's offensive line ranked number 5 in pass blocking, but number 29 in run blocking. So if you bring Baker Mayfield in, he's a throwing quarterback. So if they're a better pass blocking team, that fits Mayfield better.
Again, I don't think Baker Mayfield is as good as Kyler Murray is, but I could see the point of, okay, we need a guy to fill in the role. But to me, it'd be another kind of a Teddy Bridgewater thing where you're here for a year and we're trying to basically find the next guy. I don't think Baker Mayfield ends up being the guy in Arizona if he were to go there. But that's all intriguing stuff that we could see happen. We're going to transition over to the NHL because we got to show some hockey love over here because we are in the first round of the NHL playoffs. The Carolina Hurricanes are a team that I watch because they are here in North Carolina. Boston Bruins, I follow a lot of Boston teams, so they have a series against each other that is going to a Game 7. Dustin, out of these first round series, I'm not sure which team you support, but what is the series that you are really intrigued in, or what series has really shown you something?
Honestly, the entire NHL playoffs has been ridiculous.
It has, truly.
Legitimately ridiculous. And I'm going to look at Boston and Carolina right away.
That series is just...
This is a Carolina team that absolutely manhandled Boston during the regular season. They were 4-0 against Boston during the regular season, and they outscored them 21-2 during the regular season. Boston had no chances against Carolina in the regular season. And here Boston is winning Game 6 5-2.
But also... Game 7. Talk about it from a home ice advantage too. You talk about the first two games. Carolina won like 5-1 and 5-2 the first two games. It was not even close.
Yep.
Then here comes Boston in games 3 and 4. They go win 5-1, 5-2. And then they go back to Carolina, another 5-1 win. They go back to Boston, and it's a 5-2 win. And you're like, what in the hell is going on over here?
Yeah, I mean, St. Louis Blues knocked out the Wild in 6, which I'm surprised that went 6. Honestly, I thought that would be over in 5. Colorado Avalanche look like a team on a mission.
They do.
I mean, they are a lot better than what Nashville is, but I still expected Nashville to put up more of a fight than what they did.
It's not even close, these games against
those. But that Colorado Avalanche team is scary good. Scary good. You have to look at the Tampa Bay Lightning going for the first three-peat since I think the Los Angeles Lakers did their last three-peat. They're trying to become the first professional sports teams to three-peat since the Lakers. Down 3-2, needing a must-win. forcing a Game 7 with their overtime win last night. Now they have to go into Toronto, but I trust Tampa Bay in Game 7 more than I trust Toronto just because Tampa Bay's been there, done that. You have 3 games tonight. All 3 games have the potential to go to a Game 7.
Yeah.
I mean, this NHL playoffs, with the exception of Colorado, who just took Nashville out back and said, here you go, we'll just kill you now before.
And even then, Game 2 went to overtime. Like, Game 2 did go to overtime.
Game 2 did, but the rest of them were
The rest of them didn't, but yeah.
But the NHL playoffs have been amazing. And I haven't watched much of them because my team has sucked the last 5 years after making the playoffs for 27 straight years. So it's a
what's your team?
Detroit.
Yeah, Detroit Red Wings fan. Yeah, I figured.
I mean, they'll make the playoffs eventually. I'm not worried about it. They'll get back in eventually because I do trust Steve Yzerman, mainly because Steve Yzerman built the Tampa Bay Lightning into what Tampa Bay is.
He did, yeah.
Granted, it might take a little bit longer for him to get Detroit at that level just because they don't have the talent that Tampa Bay had when Steve Yzerman came in there. They don't have the assets to give away to kind of get a lot of the young prospects they got back then.
Right.
But I still trust Steve Yzerman to get this team to where they need to be. Now you add in that Jeff Blashill had his contract not renewed, and the New York Islanders fired their coach, Barry Trotz, just because they didn't make the playoffs. I think he would be a great fit in Detroit.
Barry Trotz is a much better head coach.
Detroit wants to be like, hey, let's make a move and go get Trotz now. That's going to speed up your rebuild right there because he's great with young players. He's great with veterans. Mm-hmm. You have still pieces in Dylan Larkin and Tyler Bertuzzi. You made some trades this year. You have Jacob Vrana, who you traded for last year, so you have a good starting 3. You have a young goalie in Alex Nedeljkovic who showed potential. You have, I think his name is Marian Kosa or something like that that's in the minors right now that's supposed to be a top 10 goalie coming in, so you have the pieces there. Mm-hmm. But, yeah, I mean, you can see the one thing in the playoffs this year as opposed to playoffs in the past. The playoffs used to be dominated by goaltending. And
absolutely.
You used to have guys like Jonathan Quick where if that guy would get going, you had no chance. There was absolutely no chance that you were going to win because the guy would stop everything in sight.
Yeah, even the Hurricanes last year, right? Their rookie goaltender was unbelievable during the playoffs. Yeah,
that's Nedeljkovic, who Detroit has now.
Oh, okay, yeah. Right.
Granted, yes, you have strong goaltending play now yet, but the NHL playoffs have been dominated by offense. And it hasn't even been close because the teams that are winning are scoring 5-6 goals because you have so many scoring options now in each team. It's not like back early, even in the early 2000s when you had Sidney Crosby, nobody else. When you had guys like Wayne Gretzky back in his prime and nobody else. It is legitimately you have 3 scorers, sometimes 4 scorers on each team.
Even up to Chicago, like the Blackhawks team, even like in 2014 when it was like Patrick Kane and really everyone else is kind of on the down end.
Patrick Kane and Jonathan Toews, and then everybody else was non-existent. But now it's like, take what team is that? Take Colorado, for example. They have 4 guys on their team with 25 goals. They have 3 guys on their team with 30 goals, and they have 2 guys on their team with 40 goals. I mean, there's so much explosiveness in the NHL playoffs now that you can have a goalie that was allowing 2 goals a game during the regular season. They'll be lucky to allow under 4 in the playoffs just because of how much offensive firepower there is.
Yeah, it's unreal. So I want to talk to you about the games tonight. We have the Florida Panthers in D.C. taking on the Capitals. We have the Calgary Flames taking on the Dallas Stars. And the Bruins taking on that is not a game today. And the Rangers taking on the Penguins. Those are the 3 games today. Do you think any of those games are going to go to 7? You think anyone wins that game to force to 7?
I think the Rangers 4-7.
You think Rangers 4-7?
I think the Rangers 4-7 just because those teams are in the same division. They know each other so well, and it's such a great rivalry that I think that series will be a Game 7. I think Calgary will finish Dallas off tonight, so I don't see that one going in Game 7. I think the Panthers finish off the Capitals tonight, but I want the Capitals to win.
Right.
And the only reason why I want the Capitals to win is because of Alexander Ovechkin.
Yeah, I mean, everyone loves Alexander Ovechkin.
I want to see him catch Gretzky.
Yeah. And
realistically, he's the only player that I think that we're going to see in our lifetime that has a shot to catch Gretzky.
I agree.
And the more he plays, the more games he gets, the better chance he has to pass Gretzky. Do I want them to win the championship? No. But I want him to get at least 5 or 6 more games where he can try to get more goals.
Yeah, got more points in there. I think the Caps win tonight. I think the Florida Panthers played really well all year long. But I think the Caps are going to get it done tonight. I don't know, something about home ice in this playoff run that just seems to really matter. So I got the Caps there. I can see the Rangers forcing 7, but I also think Calgary finishes off Dallas. Calgary just looks like the better team in the series. Yeah, the NHL has just been really exciting. I think all the playoffs this year have been really fun. When you talk about the NFL has been very exciting, the NHL obviously, and the NBA now has been super entertaining. The MLB, even their playoffs with you talk about Atlanta and their whole thing. Like I thought the playoffs this year or the 4 major sports teams were really unreal.
Yep, and the NHL saved themselves by going to TNT and ESPN.
Yep.
And getting off of NBC and having some games yet on USA, but by going back to ESPN like they were in the early 2000s before they had that first lockout, or the last lockout that canceled their 2005 season, the NHL saved themselves. Because they already had the contract with ESPN Plus where, I don't know if you have ESPN Plus or not, but I have ESPN Plus, so I was watching a lot of NHL last year. But now linking up with regular ESPN, they're getting tons more viewership than they've ever had before.
Yeah, because everyone's just on ESPN anyway. So at some point, hockey's just going to come on, and you're just going to be stuck watching it.
Yeah, and they definitely saved themselves because of it. Now, because it's like, well, we're on the biggest sports network we have.
Yeah,
we're getting the viewership now because the talent is better now. The action is more faster paced than what it was last time we were on ESPN. There's a lot more stars in the game now than the last time we were on ESPN. So now people are actually going to turn in and watch these games more. And they started to see the ratings this year. The ratings this year from last year are at a 75% increase just because they went to ESPN.
Yeah.
The ratings this year from the last time they were on ESPN was a 58% increase. So they already saw the significance of going to ESPN.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. Damien posted a question here. Aaman, how do you feel about the Stidham trade? Do you wish y'all should have gotten more than a 6 for Jarrett Stidham? Look, Jarrett Stidham was never going to be our franchise guy. I was excited when we drafted him. I thought we got a steal. I think we picked him up in the 4th round, 3rd or 4th round. I think we won the 2.
I think it was 4th, yeah.
Yeah, so he never really made the strides we were really looking for. It's the reason we ended up picking up Mac Jones. I think he's going to end up being more of a Brian Hoyer. So the fact that we got a 6th, I think is okay. Like I'm not sweating it. I think I'm more interested to see we picked up Bailey Zappi, so I'm curious about that. Getting De'Aaron King as well. I don't know where he's going to fit, but I think Bailey Zappi is someone I was really excited about getting because he just tore up FBS. But you make that trade because now if Derek Carr isn't the guy in Vegas, if Josh McDaniels doesn't like Derek Carr, well, there you go. You go and get him Jarrett Stidham, but they gave him the contract extension. So I think it's like a Brian Hoyer kind of move, in my opinion.
And I'm going to ask you a question before we get off.
Let's do it.
Did you see the column that I wrote the other day about expansion in professional sports?
So I skimmed a little bit. I did not see everything.
So
I know you said 32 teams per league.
I said
right?
32 teams is what the number should be, just because it allows you to make 8 4-team divisions. It allows you to make 16 teams per conference to make the playoff field easy. You can just do 8 and 8 on each side, and it makes the scheduling so much easier.
Right.
And with that being said, I said the NHL, now that they added Seattle, is done. Unless the Arizona Coyotes are forced to relocate or something, then it's technically not an expansion team, it's a relocation. Same thing with the NFL. I don't see the NFL expanding. I see them doing more so relocating.
Well, Jerry Jones wants a second, or someone wants a second Dallas team, right?
Someone wants a team in San Antonio.
Oh, okay.
But I don't see them expanding. I see them relocating if a Jacksonville or somebody moving, or honestly the Chargers should get the hell out of Los Angeles and go back to San Diego because they never should have left in the first place. But if we're looking at it, we'll talk about baseball and the NBA quick because MLS is expanding every single year. They have 28 teams right now. They go to 29 teams next year, and then they're supposed to have 30 teams after that. If the NBA were to go to 32 teams, who do you think the 2 teams would be?
Seattle. Got to get a franchise back in Seattle.
That's the one that I think is guaranteed just because of the Kraken now coming to the NHL with the redone arena and everything. And
then Seattle Sounders out in the MLS, so there's a lot of teams coming to Seattle. Elsewhere, man, do they entertain the idea of a second Canadian team? I don't know about that. I don't think they
That failed
would.
at Vancouver. I don't think they bring it back.
Yeah,
Because
I don't think they entertain that idea
if you
again.
bring in Seattle, you know you're going to have Vancouver fans just because it's
Right.
right
Yeah,
across the border.
exactly. Exactly. Um, Honestly, man, I really don't know where I'd want that second team to be. I don't think I'd mind anywhere else. Anywhere. Would it be cool to get another team back in kind of the St. Louis area?
I
Maybe.
said I said Kansas City
Yes, I think that the Midwest to me is
just
where I would
because
want
they
that.
have the Sprint Center already. They
Mhm.
use that for the NCAA tournament. They use it for all these big events, so you wouldn't even need to build an arena. You
Right.
already have the arena. Granted, St. Louis doesn't have a football team, but St. Louis has the St. Louis Blues.
Right.
So that's kind of like St. Louis's baby. They have the Cardinals, whatever. Kansas City's got the Chiefs, they got the Royals, they got Sporting Kansas City.
Yeah.
But
True.
you could add that basketball team into the mix, and that's kind of like, hey, this is kind of that one franchise where everybody in Missouri is going to root for because it's the only basketball team. Just like with the St. Louis Blues, it's the only hockey team, so everybody in Missouri is going to root for that hockey team.
Right. Yeah, I think the Midwest makes a lot of sense for a second NBA team outside of Seattle.
And then for baseball, I said Montreal's a given. If baseball's already said they're expanding.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
they said they're gonna start filing the paperwork in 2025, and they want to they want the two new teams to be in play by 2027.
Mhm.
Montreal's a given, just
Yeah,
because
just
they
kind of
need
curious.
another Canadian team. Just for the whole rivalry with Toronto, they need another Canadian team
Yep.
up there. The other markets that I mentioned Louisville, I mentioned Nashville, I mentioned Portland, I mentioned Vegas, but I think Charlotte. I think
I was
Charlotte.
gonna say Charlotte
I
too
think
because we got the
Charlotte
Durham
get
Bulls over here that has a big following. I would be pumped to see an MLB team here.
now that they added the Charlotte soccer team this past year.
Yep.
The only team that they are missing out of the major sports is baseball.
Yeah, that's true.
And it would make sense just because Charlotte's a growing metro area. It's a nice metro area. They have the baseball field that the Charlotte Knights use right now. I don't remember what it's called, but that is very easily expandable where you can make that an MLB facility.
Yeah, I agree. I was gonna say Charlotte area, the Raleigh area. I think another area maybe Orlando. They could go throw another team down there in Florida if they wanted to. But I don't know if they go Florida.
You look at the attendance in Miami and Tampa Bay, they would not be foolish
Yeah.
enough to put a baseball team in Florida.
You could consider Indy. I think that was another thing that maybe got tossed around a little bit. Maybe Indianapolis is a name you might hear around. But I was Charlotte to me made the most sense. Damien has a question for you though. Before we get off, or for both of us, what's y'all's thoughts on the reports of Big Ben having beef with the Steelers?
I mean, who hasn't he had beef with at one point in his life?
Yeah, I mean, okay, you're retired now. Having beef with the Steelers, I feel it's just got to be around. I feel like it's like a later part of his career, just not having the talent and the talent that they have. Kind of, what I mean. I feel like it's that kind of beef where it's like, oh well, you could have got me this guy, that guy, and the other guy. I don't know. I really don't have many thoughts on Big Ben having beef because he was a Steelers guy. The Steelers really did right by him all the way through. It just felt like on the outside they always
I mean,
paid him.
realistically, they could have gotten rid of him when he had the rape allegation.
Exactly. So
And
I
yet
feel
they
like they were
stuck by
very
him.
loyal. They were, they did the right thing by Ben Roethlisberger. So him having beef to me doesn't really make a lot of sense. I don't know. And it might just be, maybe in this relationship, it's hard sometimes. Maybe that's all it was. But I want to appreciate everybody for sticking around, tuning in. Damien, thank you for all the questions. Everybody in the comments, appreciate you guys. Dustin, had a blast as always, chatting with you. Good luck with your conversation tonight. Do you want to go and plug that podcast episode that's going to come out a little bit?
Yeah, so the website that I do blogging and columns for, I brought back the Chicago Sports HQ podcast, where the last couple of weeks I've been kind of going through the Chicago Cubs minor league system, and I've kind of transitioned now into the White Sox minor league system. I had the AA play-by-play announcer on last night, and now I have the low A media director on today. So we're going to be talking White Sox prospects. We're going to be talking White Sox baseball. Next week I have the GM and vice president for the Windy City Bulls lined up to talk Bulls basketball, to talk Marko Simonovic and Devin Dotson and some of those pieces that the Bulls drafted that they kind of stashed in Windy City the last couple of years. And once the Chicago Blackhawks decide to hire a new head coach, that's kind of going to be my next step, is getting that guy on the podcast. So,
yeah. All right, that's awesome, man. Good luck with all of that. Again, everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. Dustin, thank you so much for having this conversation with me. Good luck with everything that's going on and with the podcast. And stay safe, y'all. Catch all the sports coming on this weekend, and we will see you right back here next Friday on ASAP Recap. Until then, you know what to do. Stay safe.
All sports, all plays. Yeah. All sports, all plays. All sports, all plays. 365, we making a plays. We talking the game, get you through the days. We're high in the court, the dime in the lane. Variety topics, living the same. All presentation, sports information. Hitting the airways, taking the nation. All sport, all plays, like working your faces. Grace at the field, so tie the laces. All sports, all plays.